one of the hallmarks of the version of masculinity in this show is that when someone displays any kind of an emotion that men are uncomfortable with, they basically tell the people to knock it off. We saw it with Chelsea crying. We saw it with Lachlan was acting sad that his sister's wants to move away for a year. And Saxon's like, no, don't act that way.
Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. In this episode, Dan and I will continue our exploration of the White Lotus season 3, focusing on the profound impact of generational pressure and challenging ways men cope with emotional discomfort. We'll delve into how characters attempt to suppress feelings, leading to everything from substance abuse to damaging family dynamics. Tune in as we discuss episode 4 and its powerful lessons on authenticity and the cost of maintaining a false front.
Sweaty Crab, Charles, how are you?
I've never understood what they were saying or how to say it correctly. So
neither have I, so that's why I looked it up.
Oh,
and I still probably got it wrong, but
be very conscientious, not me. But I did like that Rick said, what did he say? Swati never, as he was leaving the conversation with those guys.
Well, Saxon, I don't know if you picked up on this. On the cruise, when he grabs Lachlan.
Real quick, let me interrupt.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. We're still talking about White Lotus season 3. This is episode 4. So if you haven't seen it yet, watch it and then listen to us, because we're going to drop spoilers for episodes 1 through 4. Go ahead, Dan.
So when they're on the boat, he grabs Lachlan to go talk to the ladies. He's like walking over there and he says, swastika. And like, I wouldn't have picked up on it if I hadn't listened, if I didn't watch the episode without subtitles. And it was spelled out exactly the way it's spelled.
That's hilarious.
It was so funny. Yeah. Especially coming from somebody with Austrian descent.
That's true. Yeah.
Montenegro. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That is very funny. Yeah. I didn't catch that one. I caught what Rick said.
Yeah. That was right. It was about halfway through. It was, oh my God. I died. Yep.
That's very funny. I'm sorry I missed that. That's good. So this was a good episode. I felt like the last episode, not a whole lot of stuff happened. It was really kind of just build up, and this one's kind of build up too, but a bit more intense than the last one, I would say.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So you think we should start with the rat lifts or with Rick?
I think probably with the rat lifts, based on like the chronological order of the episode, right? They were, they really started to crumble, I guess is the best.
Yeah. So we
did anyway.
Yeah. We'll start with Timothy, the father. So we got to see his penis. That was something.
So funny. My sister was super excited about it. She hadn't seen any of the episodes yet, but she was like, the first thing she said was, I was like, oh, it's a really good show. And she's like, oh yeah, I guess you get to see whatever the actor's name is. Yeah, you're going to see his penis. And I was like,
his name is Jason Isaac.
Jason Isaacs. Yeah, she's super excited about that because she's
Lucius Malfoy.
She's a Harry Potter freak. So yeah.
Yeah, it looked, I wasn't 100% sure that it was real, that it may not have been a computer generated, because I look really close. I mean, I really got in there to take a long, hard look at it, so to speak. And I don't know, maybe it was just with the lighting, but something looked up there. I don't know. They may have just CGI'd that in.
So like the last time you were hooking up with Jason, like it wasn't that big? Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah, they left the birthmark off, which I thought was weird. And the foreskin.
It's the magic of CGI, right?
Yeah. No, but I felt like I felt like they did it for a reason. They're basically showing that this guy it was not gratuitous by any means. It was definitely a way.
He's kind of like out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's drinking heavily in this episode. He's hitting his wife's lorazepam hard enough that she's missing the quantity of the pills and blaming it on jet lag. But what really going on is he's taking a bunch of psychoactive medications and he's out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And as the episode goes on, he just gets more and more fucked up or high as he's going along. He just keeps popping the lorazepam and he's drinking throughout the entire episode.
Yeah, and which is, I mean, it's kind of interesting from an evolutionary perspective how when we're at our highest levels of stress, we seek out comfort or buffers that impede our ability to handle the difficult situation that we're in the middle of when we're in the middle of it. It's like, I'm going through this thing. It's so hard. I need to have my wits about me and I need to have access to all of my mental resources, but I'm in so much emotional pain that instead of doing that, I'm going to do whatever I can to dull the pain, which also is going to kill my ability to react and deal with things.
It could be one of those things where you don't trust yourself to be able to continue to deal with things based on your assumption of the emotional, physical feelings that you're having at the time.
Yeah.
So I would say I know when I felt that way, I felt like I didn't have the ability with my current state of being to handle that situation. And so I needed to change my state of being, unfortunately. And yeah, you're right. It's never, it's never really for the better.
No, if I've said before that if your solution to problems is to get drunk, then you just go from being a guy with problems to being a drunk guy with problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the problems don't go away, but I do understand the impulse to be like, I just don't want to feel this right now. And it's funny when he was toward the end of the episode, when he's talking to his lawyer, again, voiced by podcaster and author, Professor Scott Galloway. We share a fair amount of his content on our Instagram because he has some interesting things to say about politics, masculinity, things like that. And he was the voice of the lawyer. He was setting up Ratliff with some, I mean, like, you'll just go away to a minimum security federal prison for a few months. I mean, that's a pretty good deal for embezzling money and starting up a fake investment fund and whatever else him and Kenny did together. It's like, I think it's really the social impact that is freaking him out and is causing him to want to try to figure out, I guess when he gets back to America, try to figure out a way out of this. But it's like, dude, your lawyer's telling you he can make a deal where all you get's a couple of months away from your family.
And his reaction is, I'd rather die.
Yeah.
And then he goes, what am I supposed to tell my family that we're fucking poor? And then he gets off the phone after yelling at him, berating him, telling him to figure something else out. He pukes, and then he looks up, and that's when he sees the empty guard booth.
Yes. And do we see what he does with the empty guard booth, or is it just into that?
You just see his head like look up, and he sees that the booth is empty, and then it cuts to the next scene right there.
Right. Then
right?
Guy Talk comes back and his gun is missing.
So Guy Talk now is not doing his job again by walking Mook, because he's flirting with her. She had gotten dressed up for the performance, so she's looking all sexy, and I'm guessing that's not part of his job, right? Is he's like, oh, I'll walk you to like the main building from the guardhouse, because that's where they were talking. So he leaves his post, and apparently, well, so the gun is in the drawer there, but when he comes back, he sees that the box is like on the table, right, and it's empty, right? Yeah.
And a couple notes on gun safety here. You don't leave your gun out and not secured. And
it looked like it was a cigar box. It looked like it was a cigar box. It was hysterical.
The other thing that, casts some doubts to me on the quality of the security infrastructure at that resort is taking some guy to a shooting range so that he might be able to develop some level of target accuracy is not training someone to use a gun to prevent crimes. That is not the same thing. Like, if you and I go to the gun range every weekend for 2 years and we get really good at putting little holes in the bullseye, that does not mean that if a crime breaks out, we're going to effectively be able to choose our targets, be aware of what's going on behind the person that we're going to shoot to try to prevent, crime or death or injury. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there that's like,
and I feel like there's a little bit of strategy that needs to come in before you even pull the gun out, right? You know what I'm saying? In terms of, that's got almost nothing to do with the gun, that there needs to be some sort of training on that front as well.
Right? Which is what police stations and militaries hammer into the people that join up with them. It's like, this is not, yes, being able to put the hole where you want to put the hole is important, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that you need to understand before you're given a protection job that has a gun as a tool. And so That's also, I mean, the gun is obviously a blinking neon sign of foreshadowing, like, hey, we wouldn't put this in this episode if it's not going to come back later in this episode, later in the series, blah blah. Chekhov's gun, right? You don't introduce a gun and then not do anything with it. So
Okay, hold on.
So-
Explain Chekhov's guns for everybody who's not a Trekkie.
it has nothing to do with Star Trek. It's the Russian author Chekhov.
I thought that was like a special episode from Star Trek that like was like famous for like, I don't know, some sort of philosophical lesson to learn.
Now I got it. Now I got to look at
Oh, that's historic.
Chekhov.
Well, are you proud? Are you proud of me that I remember that name from Star Trek? Though, come
Yeah,
on.
no, absolutely. Well done. Chekhov's gun comes from the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, who famously stated, if in the first act you have hung a pistol on the wall, then in the following one it should be fired. Otherwise, don't put it there.
Okay. Yeah. So minimalist.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm sure Mike White is aware of Chekhov's work, and yeah, he would not introduce a gun if he didn't plan on it
I mean,
going off.
the show is great because if you go back and you listen to it, there'll be similar type of music that's kind of this eerie tinkling of the keys or whatever that is in the background every time you hear or you see something that's going to be significant and that rears its head again later in the show. Something that really you got to see a little bit more of the character of the dad in terms of his background. One thing I really enjoyed was hearing him share when he got into that drunken state. A lot of us get sentimental. A lot of us it's like truth serum, right? We start spilling out all these stories. And he's on the boat. He's talking to some random couple from Australia, and the guy's being really nice. He's trying to engage him with conversation, and he's saying, "Oh, hey, what do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I'm in finance." He's like, "Oh, that must be fun." And I mean, it's like over the top because, like, yeah, really. And he goes, "Yep, I'm a pillar of the community." And he's like, "Are you now?" And he goes, "Yep, my dad was the governor of North Carolina, and thank God he's dead."
Grandfather.
Oh, his grandfather? Okay.
Father was a very successful businessman.
Very, very, very successful businessman, he says. Yes, that's right.
Thank God, and thank God they're dead.
And thank God, and he does a cheers to the heavens with his glass as for he's like, thank God my parents are dead. And it goes to show like the pressure that he's under from external areas, but that he's obviously internalized that himself too.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, he's definitely having some problems, and the pressure again. I really do feel like it's the social pressure that is really getting to him more than the idea of even the money. I mean, I obviously the money is important to him, and the house is important to him, but it really does feel like the reputation and his family going from rich to poor because of his actions is the thing that's sparking this attitude of I'd rather die than go through this.
Yeah. And if you remember, he's lying there on the couch next to his wife, and his wife's like, "What's up with you? You're acting all different." Obviously, he's like stoned out of his mind and drunk. And he's like, "No, I'm not." And she storms off, goes to get her bottle of lorazepam out of her hidden purse, where only her and her husband knew where it was.
Right.
She goes in there, and now it's gone. Like the entire bottle is gone because he swiped it. And she comes back and she goes, "Somebody took my bottle of lorazepam." She's all pissed off, and he gaslights her, and he's like, you sure you didn't lose it? You're losing stuff all the time."
Right.
And it just shows like how much of a wall, a facade this guy is building up in front of his family just to protect what his own shit that's crumbling behind the scenes.
Yeah, and meanwhile he knows it's gonna come out eventually. He's just kicking the can down the road a little bit. It's not like anything he does is going to prevent the tidal wave, the tsunami from coming. He's just like, let me just push it off for a couple of days and do it even more harm, obviously, by trying to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can see there's holes in his dam because then his daughter Piper sits down next to him, and then he starts crying, and he's just like, "Oh, I love you so much." And you can see that he's thinking about him going to jail or going away and not seeing her again.
Right. Meanwhile, again, you got to assume that what the lawyer is suggesting over the phone is probably pretty accurate. Like if he's saying, "I can get you a couple months," he probably knows I can get you a couple of months. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that seems huge, but he's gonna, assuming that he gets home and he deals with the situation, he's gonna get arrested. and then he's going to get he's probably going to get bailed out and have to give up his passport, and then he's going to have a while before his trial, and then after his trial, or I guess if they make the deal, he's not going to go to trial, but there's going to be some period of time where he's not in jail, and then once he gets sentenced, they're going to send him to a minimum security white collar federal prison. That, I mean, we learned from Office Space that they can still be kind of rough, but not that rough. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I don't know. When I hear about the white collar crime, minimum security prison stuff, my immediate reaction is always like, what is the big deal? Like,
You're like, sign me up.
well, I mean, listen, for a couple of months, I mean, hey, you don't get to have your phone, you don't get to have the unsupervised access to the internet, probably, but there's books in prison, there's gyms in prison, there's free food in prison. And again, when it's minimum security and you're not being thrown into the middle of a gang war or something, then
Yeah.
again, I'm kind of like, what's the big deal?
A gang war, the counts versus the lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're in here now, you got to choose a side. Are you going to be the, I was going to say the former Biden staffers or the former Trump staffers, but they all get pardoned, so none of them end up in prison anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's been interesting. Yeah, seeing him first, he was gaslighting his son last week about his career, right? Buttering him up and trying to manipulate him emotionally. And then, yeah, seeing him do the same thing to his wife. It's like, yeah, he's pulling out all these little coping mechanisms and defense strategies, and it's terrible to watch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's going on with his kids in this episode? So Saxon and Lachlan's got some magic tricks at least, and that's kind of fun to watch.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Saxon is continuing to be himself and be kind of crass and annoying and performative and saying the things he thinks he needs to say and doing the things he thinks he needs to do. It was interesting. One of the hallmarks of the version of masculinity in this show is that when someone displays any kind of an emotion that men are uncomfortable with, they basically tell the people to knock it off. We saw it with Chelsea crying. We saw it with Lachlan was acting sad that his sister's wants to move away for a year. And Saxon's like, no, don't act that way. I forget exactly what he said.
Yeah, don't hang out with like Debbie Downer, basically. Yeah, with the sourpuss over there. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of like, hey, what's going on? Let's talk about what's bothering you. It's no, stop, don't do that.
Ignore it.
Your feelings are making me uncomfortable, so you need to stop it.
Don't start making me feel something.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been there. I've reacted that way to feelings before, and yeah, it's not helpful, it's not effective, it's not a loving way to be, but it can absolutely feel like that impulse you have in the moment when you see somebody having an experience that, you know, either you don't want to feel responsible for or you're not comfortable with, and you don't know what it might mean for you, so therefore, you got to stop that. You're making me uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Saxon's clearly there to party, have a good time, and get laid.
Yeah, but I mean, I get the impression that he's everywhere for that. Like that's where,
Good point.
whether they were in Thailand or at the office, it's like what? Yeah, it's his mode, and that's what he cares about. Let's see, what else did we see about the brothers? It does, yeah. I mean, Lachlan is definitely stuck with this example, who's just a few years older. I did not have an older brother who's just a couple years older than me, but I imagine the pressure's got to be huge, especially if they're even a moderate performer in sports, in scholastics, in work, in their career, whatever it is. There's got to be, I mean, brother to brother, sister to sister, there's got to be a lot of pressure there. Like, okay, I've got to perform at a level or above my older sibling, or else.
Yeah, and also Saxon is almost a spitting image of their dad, and the dad, again, he's got all this pressure, he's got all this reputation. Of course, Saxon and Lockie probably know the history of their family as well, and the expectations that both the mother and the father have of them. So clearly, Lockie is feeling some sort of pressure to live up to, and he's at least visualizing and has that high level or that standard that he's got in his mind. And so, yeah, he wants to get there, I think, or at least some part of him does. And when Piper basically tells him the truth that why they're there, it was for her to spend a year away. He gets upset. He's like, well, what about me? She's like, well, you'll be in college.
Right.
And at that point, he feels like his older sister kind of abandoned him a little bit. So that's when he walks away. She's like, don't walk away. And he walks away and goes over to Saxon at that point. He goes to the other older sibling. And so you can see there, he's just kind of like, all right, well, you don't got my back. So even though Saxon may not be where I want to be, at least I feel like he cares and he's gonna be there.
Yeah, and he definitely took it hard. Because I think he identifies with his sister in some ways more than with his brother.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
because at least the version of her that she is wanting to be and wanting to put out there definitely seems to be more lined up with who Lachlan authentically is. And so, there's something else that Saxon said. It was either about it was when he was making the protein shakes, and when Piper was saying girls aren't into Chisuku's jacked guys. He's like, how would you know what girls are into, basically? And I thought that was interesting. And listen, I mean, Piper does have a bit of a point in that, in my own experience, girls really want strong men, but it's emotionally strong that is what they're looking for. And a shortcut, quick way of making that determination, at least at some level, is, okay, well, if he's physically strong, he's probably emotionally strong too, because it's hard to get physically strong. So we do that shortcut in our mind where it's like, okay, well, I can't spend weeks or months getting to know everybody. So what are some easy ways that I can look at somebody and
Sure.
try to gauge what's going on inside them? And one of the things is like, if you have the discipline and you have to put in enough work to have a strong body, then there's probably a strong mind behind that.
Yeah, there's the potential then to apply that discipline in other areas of life.
Right. Yeah.
Potential.
Which
and sometimes that's all it is.
And that is an interesting discussion to have and an interesting thing to think about, where now it's so easy to walk in and get a gym membership just about anywhere. And it's also easy to get exogenous testosterone for your body. Having a really good physique 400 years ago, 1,000 years ago meant, oh, okay, this guy works very hard with his body all the time. And that's the reason that it looks that way. Where now the hardware still says that that's the way things work, but the software isn't necessarily that way anymore, where it's there are shortcuts. I mean, it's still, if it was super easy, everybody would do it. So it's not super easy, but it's certainly not a big built body is not the same. It doesn't mean the same thing now that it meant 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. And I think as men, from what I've learned and understood, is that physical appearance is definitely important to women, but not nearly as it is to men. And so even that, I think we might be giving too much weight to men's physical appearance in terms of the level of attraction it brings for women. I think that's why I think a lot of women are a lot slower to get into longer term relationships and into bed with men, because they know that there's sometimes it's more than just the physical attributes of a man, that they need time to figure out what's under the surface a little bit more. And
I mean,
probably because of what you just said.
It depends on, I mean, part of it depends on what women are looking for and what method they're using for. If you look at the stats on dating apps, it's like, no, the 10% most attractive men are the only ones that are getting matches on most of the dating apps, and all the other guys are getting few to none. And that's, and so what are they usually going off? They're going off pictures, which is how symmetrical is the face and what kind of shape is the body in is what they're using. When you're talking about the subset of women that are looking for men, not every woman is on dating apps, obviously, but for the ones that are, and not everyone that is on dating apps are prioritizing physical appearance. But most of the women who are on dating apps are using that as their quick swipe left, swipe right judgment.
Right. So I think, and I can see that, like, as an initial pool to say, hey, listen, of this pool of attractive men, at least maybe part of them, some of them, a small percentage of them might have other attributes and other qualities.
Sure.
So why not pull from the most attractive men and look for those other qualities rather than the not so attractive men? And why am I pulling from there? Especially considering, from what I understand, is the experience of a woman on a dating app where they basically literally have a pool of like a swimming pool full of options, whereas men typically have a lot less to choose from. Why not pick a swimming pool that's more at least attractive than another swimming pool?
Yeah, exactly. If you're like, if your attitude is I really want a guy with a great sense of humor, then pick among all the good-looking guys and then see which of them have a good sense of humor. The best sense of humor might belong to some guy that you consider to be really unattractive. And if he's so unattractive you wouldn't want to date him or hook up with him or hang out with him anyway, then why put him in your maybe pile with a right swipe when you might just I get it. And I think guys who focus on that and want to think they want to get angry about it, they want to think that it's unfair in some way. It's like, no, everybody's just doing what they feel like they need to do to find what they need to find.
Listen, you got to get over the whole unfair thing. First of all, life isn't fair. Second of all, you are literally putting yourself in the arena for competition. Like it's not like you're like walking around your normal day and your job is you sell ice cream or whatever, and you're you're trying to meet people on your route, right? You're literally like consolidating all of this effort into a real concentrated pool of people where the sole thing is to compete for attention.
Right.
So you're not, you can't, guys should shut up about that.
I tend to agree. Yeah.
Really?
If you find the dating app situation to be demoralizing or a downer in some way, then don't use it. And
100%.
Don't put yourself into that kind of a competition.
And just know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah,
but then optimize for it. If you know you're getting there, right? Yeah, like work on the things that you feel like you want to work on. That will make you more competitive in that area. Otherwise, don't complain.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's talk about Rick. So we finally get some insight on what's going on with Rick here in the 4th episode. He wants to meet the guy that he believes killed his father, who is some kind of a hero who was in Thailand trying to help poor people. And then this big hotel owner, real estate developer, business tycoon, whatever this guy is, killed him. And that's what his mom revealed to him on her deathbed.
Yep. And Chelsea basically has to demand that out of him. He was resistant to saying anything to her, and he finally gives in and is a little bit vulnerable with her. And it was sweet and a little unexpected that she at the end comes and she hugs him after he says that. But it sounds like he's a vindictive, I don't know, piece of work.
Yeah, but I think she can see how much pain. And I mean, he accepted her hug, and he looked like a little bit like he was comforted by it, which was nice to see.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it's kind of more foreshadowing, like the gun. It's like you can't tell the audience, hey, there's going to be a confrontation between this guy and this other guy who he thinks killed his father. It's like, yeah, this is going to be a mess. Obviously, this is going to be, and like not having a plan of, I'm not sure if I'm going to kill him out of revenge or not. That doesn't sound like a great idea.
Right. She flat out asks him, she's like, is this one of these, you killed my father, prepared to die situations?
Right.
And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow.
Yeah. Like,
you're just going to be like at the whim of your emotions when you actually see this guy, most likely be overwhelmed and then perhaps do something stupid.
Yeah. Where I wish it would have been nice if he did have another meditation session with what's her name, the meditation lady, to work some of this stuff out, to sort of come up with what is it that you want to feel? What is it you want to do? So we know his story now. We know what he's after, and he's got to fly to Bangkok to confront this guy. And so we'll see more about that in episode 5. But
sorry to cut you off. If you remember though,
Yeah,
the
okay.
meditation teacher did say before he went to Bangkok, she grabbed him and she's like, "You touched my heart. I would
yeah,
love to have another session with you." And basically kind of like a,
right.
"Hey, I'm trying to save you here a little bit almost." And he's like, "Nah, I'm going to Bangkok."
Yeah, it's sad that they weren't able to get together, and I don't know if she would have helped or changed his mind or anything, but it would have been nice to see. But yeah, it's interesting to see how he builds this whole identity of, at some point he was a powerless kid that stuff happened to, that he couldn't control it. And now you see him exerting a mix of control and detachment with his girlfriend. And I mean, you can see he's really trying to, his relationship with her, he's basically manhandling it and strangling it so that it gives him exactly what he needs and he doesn't have to put anything into it that he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And she has to push and prod for anything from him. And it's a method for a guy who feels out of control to be a little bit in control of something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right with his identity. That's why he didn't want to meet with that meditation instructor, because I think he was afraid she was going to change his mind, and he came all that way. He absolutely needs to see this to completion. So he absolutely had to go to Bangkok. And I think he just didn't want to change his identity, or he wasn't even open to changing at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad to watch all these guys who just, they feel, I mean, it speaks to a lack of resilience when you see guys working this hard to put on such a mask of what's going on with them. Like, they're all kind of in denial of, I can't handle the world as it really is, or me as I really am. So time to put on the makeup, and get on the stage so that people can see, what I'm pretending to be.
Yeah. Yeah. To go back to the dad, I just remember him sitting at dinner with Piper and the mom, and she's like, "Yeah, that was a crazy experience on the boat, right? It was like this luxury cruise, and she had to talk to a couple of strangers, and she couldn't handle it because she didn't have her lorazepam. She says she almost had a grand mal seizure having to deal with those people, right? And she's like, they could have been criminals, and they could have been tax cheats." And then Piper's like,
Yeah.
"Y'all probably cheat on your taxes," and she's like,
Right.
"Well, not enough to leave the country." And then they shoot the camera over to the dad's face.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, that's like, okay." And she's like, you should be so lucky, Piper, that your dad's an actual Boy Scout." And the dad is getting more and more uncomfortable knowing what a facade he's putting on. And that's when he gets up from the table, and that's when he grabs the phone from Pam and then ends up
Right.
calling the lawyer, who's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, the guy Kenny Wynn is turning over, and he's talking to the feds, and he's gonna say everything." And that's right. And that led him to getting the gun. And I just I love the way they basically will throw lines that are innocent, but then the dad hears it and is just
He'll
like,
still-
"Oh, it applies to him," right? So when
Right.
after he steals the gun, he's walking back and to the bungalow, and Pam stops him, and she goes, "I think you've got something. Are you ready to give it back?"
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody's thinking, "Oh, it's the gun." And then she's like, "Your phone." And he's like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "Hopefully you won't be needing this anymore." And he's like, "I won't." And so when I saw that again, I'm like, "Oh, he's probably thinking he's gonna kill himself. That's why he won't need his phone anymore."
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so tough. I mean, for both him and Rick, and probably, I was thinking with his little speech about, my grandfather was a governor of North Carolina. My father was a very, very, very successful business. It's like you could very easily see a scenario where 10, 15, 20 years, Saxon's given that same speech. My great grandfather was governor of North Carolina. My grandfather was a very successful, very, very successful businessman. My father, we don't talk about him. But yeah, it really, that generational BS really does sort of roll downhill. And yeah, and the thing with Timothy in particular, it's like, when you build up this kind of pseudo stoic facade of, I'm the patriarch, I'm the provider, it's like, at some point, that mask that you've been carrying along with you for so long, it becomes a friend that you don't want to say goodbye to. And this situation with his legal situation, it's like, okay, it's gonna, if you want to make it through this with the best possible result based on the choices you made 15 years ago or whatever it is, you've got to be honest about not being the person that you've claimed to be. And that's when that's what sparks reactions like, oh, I'd rather die.
Yeah. So, question for you: you think also there's a little some perfectionist tendencies in there? I picked that up when the mom's like, "Oh, you're so lucky that your dad's an actual Boy Scout," which to me kind of shows this facade of yeah, he's perfect. He does nothing wrong, right? When I hear Boy Scout, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
And so maybe that's part of his facade as well, is he's basically perfect. And even I think even in that earlier episodes, the wife is like, "You've got it all. You've got money and success and a great family and da 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 da," and like basically this quote unquote perfect life.
Well, yes, and as I've learned from the brilliant work of Brene Brown, perfectionism and shame are just opposite sides of the same coin, and you don't have one without the other.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, his shame is not just about like, yeah, 15 years ago, I did this illegal thing to make a couple extra million, 10 million extra bucks. I think it's also, I never measured up to the example of my grandfather or my dad, and I've been struggling to measure up to it, and I never did. So I've never been good enough. So that motivated him to take some shortcuts he shouldn't have taken, and also motivates him to not really be somebody that his wife or his kids could actually know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that distance and that pseudo self he's created is, I wonder how much of the wife's, Victoria, is that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah, how much of his just living with him being the way that he is causing her to look for things to soothe her unmet needs, like a crap ton of lorazepam every day.
And can't handle a cruise with some strangers. She's like, I almost had a seizure having to deal with that without her lorazepam. So clearly she's saying she can't handle anything slightly uncomfortable either.
Right, and I'm not saying that everybody's mental illness is the result of the people close to them not treating them right, but I think she has gotten herself into a marriage and a family situation where the guy seems completely checked out on everything except keeping his business and his reputation going. And so that does grind on people after a time. That doesn't make him responsible for her anxiety disorder if she has one, but it's not helping.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that she mentions at dinner is like, oh, these people are not like the people at Piper's like, hey,
Yeah.
you're fine at the club with other people. And she's like, yeah, but they're good people. They come from good families. And then the camera moves to the dad, and the dad is like scratching his head, like, oh my God, the club, thinking about all the people he knows at the club. So you're totally right. Yeah. It's just, you just think of all the outside social pressures and the reputation he's got.
Yeah, it's so interesting to watch these rich fancy people in this rich fancy setting, but just having to deal with the same kinds of pressures, just at different levels and in different ways, as all of us normies have to deal with too.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so Greg/Gary, not a whole lot of interesting stuff with him. I mean, he really is the quintessential supporting character. I mean, stuff just kind of unfolds around him, and he's kind of mysterious, kind of interesting, but we never go too deep on Greg/Gary and what's really going on with him. But it is interesting to see how other people react to him and see how things unfold around him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Belinda is starting to figure out a little bit more about what's going on with him. And so that's plugging in a little bit more mystery and drama into the show. But yeah, he's kind of a blank slate or a mirror that you just see other people in the context of how they deal with him.
Yeah, I remember one of the scenes that really kind of underscores what you just said about his character was when Saxon first comes on board. He hugs Chloe because she's the one who invited them.
Right.
And then he introduces himself to Greg and he's like, hey, Saxon. And he goes, yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Doesn't give his name at all. And so it shows that how aloof he really is being with everybody.
Yeah, he does not seem to have much use for Saxon in particular, because and look, that's part of the issue with a lot of the guys that were on that boat. It's like, when you're catching girls based on nothing except how much money you have in the bank or how professionally successful you are, you always kind of have to be on the lookout for a more successful shark that's out there to potentially steal your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And in Saxon's case, he comes from money, at least he does right now. And it's very clear, it looks that way, that he comes from money. And he's also quite a bit younger and quite a bit more attractive. So what reason would Greg have for liking him?
Good point. Good point. Right.
Where, yeah, I think it's very possible that he sees him as a threat.
Yeah. Definitely think that in this situation, especially, I think this was at the last episode where he caught Chloe waving at Saxon at dinner. So he knows something's going on.
Either staring or waving or something. Yeah, there was
definitely... Oh, they're staring. That's what it was. And then then Saxon gives her a little wave into the bottle. That's what it was.
Yeah, Greg picked up on something there. And so when he sees him again on his boat, it's like, oof, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
but I was like wondering, this guy's dangerous, right? Clearly he did something to his ex-wife. So what's he got in store now for Saxon or anybody else that's on that boat?
Yeah.
Who's a threat?
Exactly. And that's the other, does he care about this girl enough to risk something like that? Or, and again, we never really knew exactly what his involvement was with his ex-wife's death, but yeah, is this the kind of guy that could go after some young kid who's putting the moves on his girlfriend? Or does he not care? He's got his money and he sees girls like her as interchangeable. So maybe it doesn't matter. We don't know at this point.
Yeah. And the episode closes out with Greg in a dark room there, typing on his computer, and then you see he's looking up Belinda, and he sees pictures of her and his son, her son there. So and that was while everybody else, Chloe and everybody and the kids were on the boat going to a full moon party at that island, because Chloe had begged him to allow them to take the boat and he had to like do some business. That's what the business he was doing. And then the next scene is Saxon coming from the inside on the boat. He's got a drink in his hand. He goes, "Shit's about to get crazy." And then they kind of close out the episode. And it was a great teaser because, you can see everything building between the dad. Now Greg is looking up Belinda. He might kill Belinda. The girls and the guys are unsupervised, quote unquote, on the boat, drinking, going to a full moon party. Yeah. So I think this was, as episode 4, it really led to some intrigue for the future episodes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. So let's stop there for now, and we will chat next time about episode 5.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for sticking with us through the whole episode. Dan and I certainly appreciate it. That'll wrap up our discussion on The White Lotus Season 3, Episode 4. Thanks again for listening. Join us next time. We're going to get into Episode 5 and explore what new challenges and revelations await the men of this luxurious, chaotic resort.